things you've been doing, and
Thank,
but good to see you. And thanks for coming on today.
thank you for having me. It's a pleasure communicating these days.
My God.
So it's a lovely way
Yeah,
to
what do you
meet.
have? That it is. I mean, it has, I think meeting people for some factors has become very efficient. And there are people
Yes.
that we've been able to connect with across the world at the drop of a hat, which one would never have considered before, even though we could.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so I mean, for the guests, I really do want to have them know Nisha is a very multifaceted lady, from the world of interior design, fashion. She's someone who's very sensitive to social causes, from equal rights to also important factors like getting accessibility across the country, like a mainstay. So, I mean, we are looking forward to a great chat with you, Nisha. And but that's a lovely painting behind you.
Thank
It's
you.
beautiful.
Thank you. I've been a very avid lover of art. I won't say collector because collector automatically connotes amassing. It's more about the love of art.
So, tell us what's been happening in the lockdown for you. I mean, different people have dealt with it differently, but you've really taken on, some of these things. You've taken on the bull by the horns, and you really impacted a lot of people. Why don't you share a little bit about what's happened in the past few months?
So what is interesting to note is that a lot of people, felt that I would be, in fact, a lot of the interviews I've done, a lot of people expressed how I'm one of the few people that they would have expected to be very upset about the lockdown because I'm, out and about and working so much. So a lot of people expected me to be very adversely affected. It's quite the contrary. Ashish, I've worked since was hardly 16 years old. So for me, this lockdown has been hugely relaxing and something where I can do what I love rather than what I have to do. Because, of course, most work except my writing columns has come to a standstill.
Yeah.
Luxury work, other work comes to a standstill. So I'm able to do a lot of philanthropic work for those people who've been rendered homeless, the migrants, the people who don't have access to masks and security in terms of health. So I've done a lot of work for them. I'm still doing a lot, and I found a lot of people, especially from the social set, are very frightened and scared about COVID because it's such an unknown, such an enigmatic thing. It's so mysterious.
Sure.
So I formed many groups where I've included a lot of doctors. And this is not so that there's free consultation at all. This is just to allay and fears, to quell doubts, and to dispel myths. So it's turned out to be really wonderful. And this actually morphed into something even more, which is that on a fortnightly basis, Dr. Suchetan Pradhan and I, we host a panel of around 6 to 10 doctors where we have thousands of questions coming in. And we ask these doctors, these common problems, questions, myths, and we address these problems on behalf of a lot of people in the world.
At what point did you decide, or when did it click? When did you start taking this step? Because it wasn't really clear at what point, where the information was out there that is correct, reliable. So when did you decide to, participate in your way?
Well, I saw a lot of fake news doing the rounds. I saw a lot of people very scared, intelligent, well educated people who were frightened and worried and didn't know what course to take. A lot of people who would just sneeze and think they've got COVID. A lot of people who got worried for, no apparent reason. I thought somebody has to do something. I've never been an armchair critic. And I always, as you know, have huge amounts of energy. So I
That
got
you do.
into action I always believe that action is better than just, sitting and criticizing various bodies. Like, Mr. Modi can only do so much. He's one man. The government is, I think, doing a fabulous job. And we as citizens have to do what we can to help along our people. You can't pile every single calamity onto the government. So I feel there should be a sort of proactive action by us all. And Ashish, one thing that has bothered me is, people treating this like a global party. And my good friend Farah Khan Kundar, the director, who I'm very fond of, also commented on this. And she said, I really respect what she said. She said, this is not a global party. It isn't a party. I mean, I don't object to people trying to keep themselves cheered up, but to consistently be insensitively posting pictures of, workout and food. I think somewhere, we have to think a little beyond ourselves, because we live in a country which has a lot of challenges. So that's where I got this idea from. It was a sort of multi-pronged response. It was a response to a multi-pronged malaise.
Now, like, there's a good part of the world and in America, with what's been happening in terms of equality, etc. We've had our own coloration in society, for a long time, and sometimes it doesn't come out as much and as prominently, though it might have the same impact on the
Right.
people on both sides. And you've been doing your bit always. It's not just during this time. Can you share? I mean, where does this thought, this inspiration come from? Has it come over the years? Were you always had this energy towards all these matters since you were a kid?
Yes, actually, now that you mention it, I was part of LTS at school, which is Leadership Training Service, where it was part of the, social service arm of the government, where we worked in shanty towns. And later I began to, when I went to America, I studied in Europe and America. I came back to India, and it became very apparent that we belong to a privileged class, and the majority of India is not from our classes. So I started doing my bit. Of course, the focus was more on my social life and my work, because
Sure.
I've never been a very understated woman. I've always been slightly glamorous. So I think somewhere in our country, to be viewed as somebody who does, um, does something beyond your own life, does, CSR, that only comes through when you wear khadi and flat chappals. I've never been a khadi and chappal person. So that part was never in focus. And that's okay. I mean, I've never done things because I wanted accolades. I've done things because I wanted change, because I wanted to be part of change. And I wanted to see change in our country. Every time I flew back from a trip abroad, I would come back and feel great uh, anguish at the state of our have and have not discrepancy. So I worked towards the have nots, and I worked to help them in whatever small way, in whatever small way I could. And then, of course, equal rights has been a very strong passion. I have worked with advocate Abha Singh we've together filed a PIL, and we've actually wrought change. We have created ramps in a lot of public spaces. So you can say that my own life, which has been fraught with challenge, probably has been an inspiration to bring change into the world. It's just that I don't very often talk about, I talk about work and I don't talk about personal challenges. So somebody, once wrote to me saying, what do you know of anguish or pain? You've got a life which is a garden of flowers. So yeah, I'm happy if that's how it's perceived. I'm happy to look happy all the time.
But I mean, correct. I mean, the happiness is your decision, So, but why don't we speak a little bit about, like where your childhood home was? Where are you coming from? What was the background?
Um, my background is, I mean, from very erudite parents, very highly educated parents, I'm from a nuclear family. My parents are from a Bombay Scottish Xavier's, Tata Institute. My father's a scholar and an award winner from Tata Institute. My parents met at Tata Institute. My mother won the American Women's Scholarship at Xavier's. So I belong to a very egalitarian, very encouraging family. When that small problem happened with Kangana Ranaut, speaking about Hrithik and speaking about, I was speaking to my father, and it just hit me as to how empowered a family I come from, because my father said, good for Kangana that, she stood up for herself. We need more women who don't get threatened and who are empowered. And I thought perhaps what I am and what I'll ever be is a large part of what my family is, because my father, it just struck me that my father is such an empowered person, because most people were saying, why is she, taking cudgels with so many people. And it was, my father was one of the few people who said, good for her. I'm so proud of Kangana. So that just reflects upon the background I'm from. I was born and brought up in India. I studied here. And I've always been a little offbeat, a little different, not very run of the mill, focused on, many things. I never did just one thing. I always painted, drew, did ballet, did elocution and drama. So this, this urge to do so many things and, live life to the least has been the philosophy of my life. So it's not something I picked up or done suddenly. I've done it all my life.
So, and I mean, and people say that, there's what happens with love at first sight. Now, you have a lot of stories, and if that's something that if you'd like to share, then you must, because because things happen, and I think when people get it from the first person, and this is not anybody's story, this is like you've had a very dynamic life. You also have a very enriched life. You also had a life that, like you said, you've gone through challenges, but you pulled out of it. And so to whatever extent you think you'd like to share, but yes, I think why don't we mention about love at first sight, or love in places where you would least expect. And did you ever expect something like this would happen to you?
Actually, no. I came straight from Paris to Delhi, and I found a lot of mediocrity. And not being immodest, but I felt I was talking down to a lot of men I was dating. So it was my mother who said, you'll probably never find somebody who will match up, so give up the thought of marriage. And my father said that marriage is obsolete. No one's getting married these days. You should think of, being an industrialist and creating a mark for yourself in the world. So please don't think of marriage. Everyone's getting divorced, my father said. So I actually was beginning to feel that I don't want to get married, because I've always been very work oriented, travel, exploration, adventure. These are my drivers. And then serendipitously, I met a very brilliant man, and we eloped. But I don't want to spoil it for your viewers. I want to tell them to read Jeffrey Archer's story, which he's written on me, in a book called And Thereby Hangs a Tale. The story is called Cast Off, and it's the story of how I met this man who I fell in love with, and I still am. And the story is also being contemplated to be made into a movie. We are scripting at the moment. And I must say that Jeffrey was very enthralled by my story. So it's now become a timeless, it's documented in one of the most famous bestsellers, books. So it's a fabulous story, and everyone must read it. All your readers, all your viewers must read it.
They must. And there are a lot of our friends here, your friends, also our friends, and others from all across the world. And would definitely encourage them to please check out what Nisha has just said. But there's something lovely about Nisha. What you should know is that she always celebrates life, and fashion, and what she stands up for is as consistent as long as as I've known you. And we were chatting earlier. It's not about to show Indianness is not about being only Swadesi or to wear khadi clothes. It's about celebrating life as you do. The idea is to do good. So why don't you tell us about that part and how you still keep your aesthetic sense as connected to what you truly are with all the activities that you do?
Ashish, I've always believed that appearances and external um, superficiality is not what reflects who and what you are. So the way you dress and the way you appear is not necessarily uh, a reflection of depth and solidarity. If somebody is wearing flamboyant clothes or is glamorous to look at, that doesn't make them any less serious, or that doesn't make them any less uh, ambitious, persevering, sincere, genuine. What you wear and what you look like is your aesthetic journey, and how industrious, how sincere, and how kind and compassionate you are as a person is an entirely different part of you. And the two, I mean, I don't see how dressing down and being, drab is more reflective of being kind and compassionate. So,
True.
yes,
True.
definitely I am a flamboyant person. I've been so since I was 3 years old, or maybe even before that. And I continue to work from the inside. I continue to build as a human being in terms of compassion, love, kindness, thoughtfulness, doing, bettering the lot of other people in life and being part of the success of others. The two don't intertwine, I believe. And you're right when you say that I'm attracted to the beautiful, things of life. I'm attracted. I work in luxury. I'm a luxury brand consultant. And it is reflected in the way I live, in the art I surround myself with, in the clothes I wear. And yet, does that take away from the work that I'm doing day in and day out? Definitely not. I work, and where it is necessary to, look a little more understated, work in the shanties, go to the, more underprivileged places, and distribute and work and inspire them and guide them and talk to them and give them PPE kits, masks, health workers, monks. You know how many thousands of ISKCON monks are out there feeding the homeless, to support them, to generate funds for them. None of this requires us to look drab. But I'm
Sure.
doing it all, and I'm doing it all with a lot of aplomb and by celebrating life. Life for me has never been a journey from the womb to the tomb. Life has to count for something.
That's good.
Life has to count for, if you were to ask me today that have I accomplished, have I done what I set out to do? I would have to say a large part of the work and the journey that I set out to, traverse, I have accomplished a lot of it. If tomorrow, something was to take me away, I would not regret, I would not have too many regrets. I have done many, many things I set out to do. And trust me, there were many. So much so that a lot of people, used to ask me, what do you do? Are you an architect? Are you a brand consultant? Are you a couturier? Are you an author? What are you? So you won't believe Time Out magazine once had a quiz as to what, it was a public quiz asking people what is Nisha Jamwal, and there were so many different questions and all were right.
True. I mean, and you truly are a multifaceted personality.
No,
And
maybe
it's good.
I don't mean it as self praise. I mean it as a message to all your viewers, or all our viewers, saying that uh, don't limit yourself, live all your dreams, do whatever drives you, and don't feel that you have to traverse only one journey. you can live a life where you, so long as you're not out to please the audiences and do things according to, the praise and the shabashi of the rest of the world. My message to the world is that go and do what you choose to do and live the life that you wanted to or set out to live. And when it all comes to an end, allow yourself to feel that, hey, I did every, or at least a large part of the things that I set out to do and I wanted to do. You know, when we were young and you had an essay in English, what do you want to grow
What is
up
it?
and become? We
Right.
always wrote one thing. Now, my question to you is why should we do just one thing? Why
Very
can't we
true.
do 10 things? Who's
Of
to
course you
stop
can.
us? So long as you're not, flippity gibbet and jumping from one thing to the other, so long as you're willing to have the passion to see it through
Sure.
and take the ups and downs from, your journey. For instance, let me give you an example. Midway through my interior architecture career, I decided to do fashion and couture. So I went to Ensemble to Tina Tahiliani and she said, sure, bring your stuff. And I said, no, Tina, you allow me to present to you like a rookie, like a Johnny come lately. Don't treat me like Nisha Jamwal. Allow me to present. Only if you like my couture should you open your doors for me. She said, of course, that stands to, that's obviously I would only do that. But come anytime. And I said, no, give me a slot. Let me come like a starter, like a nobody. And you give me a runaround. I want to be given a runaround. And I said that to Pradeep Hirani also at Kimaya. I didn't want any privileges. They were my friends. I didn't want to take advantage of that friendship. I did a proper presentation for both Tina, the CEO of Ensemble. I did a presentation for Pradeep Hirani, and both loved the stuff. And I was in their stores when I was doing couture. So my point is that have many dreams, but have then the tenacity to follow it through with hard work and the requisite runaround.
What has been your inspiration for design on the design side? What is it that inspires you? What is that that keeps you going?
Uh, Before I could write, I could paint and draw. So it's something that maybe, one has a design gene. Maybe there are people who are numbers people, and maybe there are people who are design people. I've always been a color, shape, um, balance person who wanted to see balance in design, who wanted to see color, who wanted to see vibrancy, who was attracted to Van Gogh, to Gauguin, to Monet and Manet, to all the beautiful buildings made by Arada Isuzaki, to Florence, to Torino, the palaces, the castles of Europe. So it's not something that I've, developed over time. It's something that I had since I was a young child. When most young girls got bored of museums, I would want to spend the whole day as a 6 or 7-year-old in a museum. And on my holidays, my mother would take me to Jahangir Art Gallery. We would have lunch at Samovar, and I would paint some of the paintings sitting on the floor. So, do you know what I'm doing right now, Ashish? I'm actually painting in the lockdown.
Oh,
So I
lovely.
have posted a lot of my work in on my Instagram, which is Nisha Jambal. It's a verified Instagram. Have a look at it. I have been painting right through, so much so that in the lockdown, the painting stores were closed. So I actually called the MD of Pidilite and I requested him for paints. And he sent me paints. He sent me Fevicryl, acrylic colors, which I use.
क्या बात है?
And I've been painting prolifically, apart from running around distributing masks and running around doing food for the homeless and working with doctors. I've also been painting, very excitedly. And in fact, this is right here. I didn't mean it to be here. This is something I painted. It's a stool which I'm using just now for my cup of
Oh,
coffee.
wow.
So I've been painting, and there's another part of your question I want to answer about inspiration. The inspiration of my life, I would say, has been hardship. The troughs and the rapids and the speed breakers have made me grow as a human being, have made me have also grown me as a human being in terms of taking the challenges as allies, as my teachers, as the growth factors of my life. And I really have to say that challenge and troughs are greater teachers than success and triumph. Wouldn't you agree?
Well said. I mean, I mean, that's a lot to think, and there's a lot of depth in this because uh, I can think of instances there, and we were speaking with somebody, and it's like how once we overcome our own vulnerabilities and fears, maybe at times, plus, like you said, where challenges can come in different faces to us, and once we get past them, it's like you're kind of liberated, and really, I mean, it's really correct. There is triumph in overcoming our own challenges. So I can relate to that. So
So I must say, I've had my share of it. I've had, I think, a greater share of challenges than people I see around me. I am not a maudlin or sentimental person at all. I'm a very lage raho type of person. But having said that, the triumph that comes from uh, taking the good out of a challenge is a different kind of triumph. The triumph that you achieve when you've learned and grown. And the greatest learning that I've had, if you were to ask me, my greatest learning is is that life is basically about kindness and compassion. And it's not something you're forcing yourself to do. It's a very natural and it's organic, where you start beginning to feel a sense of deep joy when you're able to empathize with people who are even your detractors, people who are envious of you, who resent your success, who are literally jealous of you. You actually feel kindly towards them, and you feel, it's okay, she'll come round. And that is when and then there are people who are having a rough time in life. So what I'm trying to convey to you is that kindness, compassion, empathy, seeing things from another person's point of view is largely what makes life more full-bodied, more beautiful, and more complete.
in your experience, what do you think? Are these attributes you're born with, or do you think you can cultivate them?
In my case, I've definitely cultivated them. I'm an only child, so I was definitely a very, loved and pampered child. And you grow up thinking life is about you. And then life happens. And then you begin to realize that life is so much more than you. And it's so much more beautiful when it's about the people around you rather than about you. Because at no point is it enriching when it's about you. It has to be about what you can do to actually improve the lot of a lot of more people than just yourself. And when it is only about you, Ashish, it's no longer an enriching and fulfilling life. And that journey of realization is what makes life complete. and or at least what has made life complete for me. So I
Sure.
definitely don't believe that I was born, being Mother Teresa. But definitely when I was very, very young, and she really loved me,
Again, sorry, I lost
Um,
your signal
I
there for
was
a second.
very, very young.
Sorry, can you just
Okay.
go over that
So
again?
what I was saying
Yeah.
was, I was saying that I was very young. I was not born as Mother Teresa. I was a person who was always, brought up to look at myself and my own needs. But as a very young girl, I also went to Mother Teresa's home and bathed the orphans with her. And she really did love me, and we did work together at Jangpura Ashram, bathing the orphans. And there was a lot of learning I even had from her. There was a friend of mine, um, I forget his name, but he was the one who introduced me to Mother Teresa. And it was really interesting. I mean, there are a lot of people who've been game changers in my life who've helped me grow. And I'd say she was one of them.
Now, as a columnist and as a writer, you have a voice that reaches out to a lot of people. And as confident as you are, and you are very expressful and honest, at times, do you think you have to be careful about what you think, or do you just like give it out the way you really think it is? Is there any filter?
Well, you start off by saying what you have to and being who you have to, and you don't filter as you start out. But as you grow up, you do definitely realize that um, life is definitely about schooling your thoughts, growing your point of view, incorporating other opinions. Ashish, life is not about me, myself, and I. Life is definitely about synergistic growth and being part of, when there are people around you you love, you definitely take their um, thoughts into account before you just blurt things or you say things. You definitely want to be able to have the ability to take feedback, to hear different opinions, to see other, growth is also about role models. You see people you like their thoughts, you read, you take a lot of input to become the person that you want to be. At least me, I always see myself as a work in progress. I have definitely never felt that I have arrived. Whereas on the one hand, I feel I've done a lot of the things I set out to. At no point have I ever felt that, hey, I'm the best version of what I can be. I think I look at myself as a work in progress, and I think I'll always be a learner. I'm always in the process of learning, metamorphosing, growing, and in my opinion, change is the only constant.
Out of all the things that you do, out of all these attributes, from the design to the service that you do, what is it that you have felt? Is there anything that is really closer to your heart than others, or they're all equally relevant at different points in time? What do you think?
Well, for instance, in the lockdown, I have really gone into, a painting in a big way, which I had not had time for because I've been so tied up and so busy. If you see my life, I'm very interactive on my Instagram. So if you see my life, you see that I'm fairly engaged with life. But this is the first occasion I've had to sit down and paint and spend my time with something I absolutely love to do. So you're not wrong when you say that different aspects of your life have relevance at different times of your life. At no point have I felt that, I've achieved what I set out to achieve. There's a lot more to do. I'm very, very young in terms of my dreams. I still have a long way to go, and I'm really excited about all of them. I'm very happy with the journey I've traversed, but I'm very excited about the journey onward as well. You know, and another thing which I think um, is a little which is a little typical of me, is I take each day as it comes. For instance, there's not one day of the lockdown where I have missed or coveted a restaurant or a dinner or a party. I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. I've not felt a craving. The only thing I may have felt a craving for is different, a change in food sometimes. I sometimes do get very tired of having home food. But that's about the only thing I must have thought of. And that luckily I have a lot of restaurateur friends who've started delivering.
Okay.
So, so that's one, one part of me which has been fulfilled.
So today I was speaking to Ojala. I mean, for those who don't know, that's my dear wife, and we were chatting, and exactly she echoed the same thing that you said. You know, it's food and to go to your favorite eatery, you know, as a change of setting of cuisine. But we were also chatting, and I want to pose this question to you: do you want to go back to way things were once things open up, or what would you do somewhat differently?
I would definitely, I've always been an environmentalist. I run a group on Facebook called Act Now for the environment. And in Act Now, I mean, in this group, I talk a lot about things that need to change. For instance, we had all thought that this specific malaise, coronavirus, COVID-19 would have taught people to be more sensitive to the environment. But people are now throwing masks in the sea. So what I would like to see as a change after this malaise, and I hope there is an after time, is that people become more sensitive and more caring about the environment. In my personal life, I've always celebrated. I mean, if you see my tweets, my Facebook, I've always celebrated friendship. I've always celebrated friends and taken time out for them. So I would continue to do that, because I think the one thing that stays with you all through life is special bonds and special friendships. The one thing I would change personally is I would not be so frenetic in terms of work. I would also cut back on work and give myself a little time to do all the things that I love, like painting, learning how to sing, praying, um, walking, doing yoga, doing things which I actually enjoy, but I've never had time to do. I've never had time, never ever had time to paint or to do yoga or to learn the harmonium.
Have you watched any movies during this time? Are you a
I have wolfed down. I have wolfed down movies. I'm a person who loves music and movies, and I have wolfed down entertainment. There were many, many box sets which I had kept waiting for one day. That one day came around mid-February, and I fished out all the box sets. I saw a lot of Bleak House. I did a complete rerun of Game of Thrones. I saw Agatha Christie's Marple and Hercule Poirot. There are lots of things I have enjoyed and am enjoying. I'm a huge movie buff, and I'm hoping to set about writing my own script very soon with a friend who's a script writer. So yes, you are speaking to a person who greatly loves film and the medium of film.
Yeah, baat hai. Gosh. I mean, the amount of work that you've done and socially, how you've been busy. Socially, I mean, with respect to matters that concern society and beyond. I want to ask a little bit more about on the accessibility front. that how with the government that you've been working, what are the steps, what are the things that you have put into motion?
In terms of accessibility, on a personal front, I am very much part of the real estate world. I have featured very often in Reality Plus magazine, which belongs to Anurag. I'm sorry, I think I got his name wrong. To the very well-known editor whose name I don't know why I'm having a blank moment there. You know, I've spoken on a lot of platforms about accessibility, coercing and coaxing builders to build ramps and accessible restrooms. The PIL was for people who were insensitive. For instance, I met the owner of Inox Cinema at a filming of a rape film by my friend Vibha Desai. And she was all smiles and all friendship. And when I brought up the ramps with her, she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to come back." And she ran away from the conversation. She just genuinely just snubbed me and walked away. Okay. So I took Inox to court and they built the ramps. So most people, Ashish, I tried to go the way, because my way is always the way of friendship. But when I find there are people who lack in sensitivity and who lack in compassion and kindness, like the lady, who owns Inox, then I have to do a PIL. It's that simple. But most people have been very kind and done it purely on the, understanding of, like, for instance, Joy Kapoor, Sunil Kapoor of Copper Chimney. He did it the moment I called him up. It was done overnight. I mean, he didn't even wait for a week. That is, there are people like Joy Kapoor and A.D. Singh. And, these are people who have genuine compassion for the differently abled. And then there are people like, I think her name was Nayantara, if I'm not wrong, from Inox. I don't remember her name, but I think it was Nayantara, who just, are willing to discuss social issue. I mean, society issues. And when you come to a socially relevant issue, they just walk away and feel that, oh my God, what is this nonsense? So, well, I mean, for those people, there's the law. And then I took recourse, and Abha Singh was very, very excited to do it with me, very encouraging, very proactive. And she's a fiery woman. She took up the cause, and we are doing it together. And we won the case, and they are, I mean, actually, it was a win-win situation. The BMC was very cooperative. Mr. Parveen Pardesi was commissioner before the lockdown, and he immediately jumped up and said, Nisha ji, ekdam se karenge hum. And he introduced me to the BMC engineer, who I'm still working with, Ashish. And we are trying to make all public buildings, cinemas, restaurants, private societies. We're making everything wheelchair friendly. But I would like to tell you that people are still very insensitive in India, and they still need to understand the premise of equal rights.
How do you think you would create awareness? What would be the tools that maybe we all can use in our own way to highlight, feature, and actually create some more information about all of this, so that we don't keep saying it again and again. That ye kab hoega ki nahi hoega. People don't know about it. What can we do? Like you said, as citizens, there's something. Okay, our prime minister is doing, but as citizens, what can we do? You think that can help people just be aware and then in time be sensitized
To what?
to like accessibility?
So I feel everyone, tomorrow, if you were to go to a restaurant or to a cinema hall or to a bank or to a government office where you didn't find there was accessibility, where there are only stairs, where there's no lift, you would go and ask about it. Each and every citizen, if they did their bit to ask for accessibility, to ask for ramps, and to ask for lifts which are accessible, it would become a norm in society. If it's not only those people who have the requirement, but every single person who goes to a public place and sees that there's no accessibility and has the sensitivity to address such an issue.
Mhm. So what's coming up next for Nisha? We've got last few minutes left. I really wanted to ask you what is coming up next with someone who's lived life so spherically and to the fullest. Like you said, you've got a big part of your bucket list probably checked out. What is it that drives you for your this next innings, and what is it that you're looking out? You're looking forward to.
I am looking forward to working at my own inspirational memoirs. I feel my life and the journey of my life can inspire a lot of women and a lot of people, even like Sushant Singh Rajput, who gave up too soon. People who are disillusioned, people who have challenges, people who feel that it's a very useless journey. I feel I can be the catalyst for them to see the brighter side. I feel that I can bring that degree of um, hope and light and beacon to the people who feel that they are the only chosen ones to have trial and tribulation. I can definitely bring the viewfinder to the fact that life is full of challenge, and the challenge is actually the catalyst to change. That challenge is what actually hones, grows, and metamorphoses us as human beings. And for that to happen, uh, I would want to write my inspirational memoirs, because I feel personally that while Jeffrey Archer gave us a vignette into my life and he did it beautifully, I feel I can also, bring a more elaborate version of my life to show people that challenge exists in most people's existences, and we must draw from other people, and we must draw from the reservoir of strength that we are born with and not give up. If only I had known this man and had the chance to speak to him for a few minutes, I genuinely believe I could have been the person to change his desire to end his life. And I could bring that change into so many people's lives. And I am doing talks like the one I'm doing with you to reach out to people to say, hey, good times come and bad times come. We have to change our vision, we have to change our attitude, and we have to try and do as many things to make ourselves, more resilient, whether it's meditation, whether it's, talking to a friend, whether it's writing a journal, whether it's exercise, whether it's prayer, whether it's, just, having a drink every evening, whatever works for you. The fact is, you have to teach yourself to be resilient, and the buck stops with you. So the one thing, Ashish, you asked me is that what would I want to do? I would want to get down to write my memoirs. I have been commissioned to do so. And I've just been so preoccupied with so many millions of things that I haven't had the time. You won't believe, that I've been busier right now at the lockdown. There are so many talks and so many, webinars and seminars and inspirational talks that I haven't really had the time. In fact, my family, my mother laughs that she says you're busier than normal, which is true. But I definitely want to do that. The other thing I want to do is postscript my story with Anuradha Tandon, who's going to work on this script with me. And the third thing, which I've never focused on and never worked at, is exercise. I'm hoping to get around to exercising regularly.
Well, great. Well,
I bunked today thanks to our chat.
well, here's to toast. Yours.
A great toast to you, Ashish.
Yeah,
I look forward to many such chats, and
No, and really wish you all the best. You're full of life. Wish you continuous energy. Your work and by itself has motivated enough people. You've affected a lot of people's lives. I love the fact that you live life to the fullest on your own terms. Like you said, to celebrate life does not have to come by looking shabby. I love the way that you stand up for your aesthetics, and you can be fashionable and stylish and still be sensitive and achieve and share, all that one would love to. So really, this is really truly to celebrate you and your life.
Thank you.
Wish you
Thank
a
you so much.
continued journey, and yeah, look forward to catching up soon. And thanks for
Thank
coming
you
up.
so much, Ashish. Thank you to all the audiences. Thank you to Instagram. I think it's a fabulous platform, and looking forward to seeing you on different venues, different platforms very soon. Thank you so much.
Good. Have a lovely night.
Thank you.
Bye bye.